Imagine walking into a room and hearing the words pregnant gorilla and refuses to give birth. You'd probably think you've heard it all, but this is a story like no other. Gigi, the gorilla at Greenfield Wildlife Sanctuary, had always been a picture of strength and grace. A proud mother-to-be, she had been monitored closely by her keepers for the last few weeks, eagerly anticipating the birth of her baby. But something strange had begun to happen. Gigi's pregnancy had reached its final stages, and yet, she was refusing to give birth. Days turned into weeks, and her behavior only became more concerning. Staff members, including her primary keeper, John, were left perplexed. Gigi seemed restless, pacing her enclosure and letting out occasional low growls, but there was no sign of her baby arriving. What's going on with her? John muttered to himself one morning, watching the gorilla as she sat in the corner, staring blankly ahead. Her large brown eyes, usually filled with curiosity, were now clouded with confusion and discomfort. It wasn't like Gigi to act this way. John had been working with her for years, and he knew her well. The gorilla had always been a calm, protective figure, never one to show signs of distress unless there was a legitimate reason. But now, it seemed as if she was locked in a silent struggle, one that John couldn't understand. As the days passed, John became increasingly worried. Gigi's behavior wasn't just a concern for the staff, it was a mystery that needed to be solved. She was refusing to give birth, and no one could figure out why. That's when the decision was made to call in Dr. Emily Johnson, the sanctuary's experienced veterinarian. Dr. Johnson was no stranger to difficult births, but this one was different. The moment she walked into the enclosure and saw Gigi's weary eyes, she knew something was off. "Let's get a full examination," Dr. Johnson said firmly, her voice calm but filled with determination. The first step was a routine ultrasound. Gigi stood still, her body tense, as the vet applied the gel to her belly. John held his breath as Dr. Johnson moved the device across Gigi's stomach. But when the images appeared on the screen, the vet's face changed. Her hand paused, hovering over the monitor, as her eyes widened. "What's wrong?" John asked, his voice thick with concern. Dr. Johnson didn't answer immediately. Instead, she stared at the screen in disbelief. It wasn't what she expected to see. The baby gorilla wasn't in the position it should be. But that wasn't all. The ultrasound revealed something far more shocking. The baby was not moving. Gigi's refusal to give birth wasn't just a sign of stress. It was something far more serious. The baby was in distress. Dr. Johnson quickly stepped back, her mind racing with questions. Why wasn't the baby moving? Was it still alive? What was happening inside Gigi's womb? The answers were unclear, and the tension in the room was palpable. Dr. Johnson's voice was low and measured as she turned to John. "We need to act fast. This is not a typical situation. Gigi's protective instincts are kicking in, but we may need to help her." John nodded, his face pale with worry. "What do we do?" "We need to prepare for an emergency delivery," Dr. Johnson said. Her words hung in the air like a heavy cloud. Time was running out, and every second mattered. John stayed close to Gigi, watching as she continued to pace back and forth. The protective mother was still refusing to give birth, but it was clear now that her actions were more than just a refusal. She was guarding her baby, but something had gone terribly wrong. As Dr. Johnson prepared the necessary equipment, she turned to John with a look of resolve. "We can save them both, but we need to move quickly. Gigi's survival instincts are strong, but we need to be ready for anything." The next few moments were a blur of activity, as Dr. Johnson and the sanctuary staff worked together to ensure that Gigi and her baby would have the best chance of survival. Gigi's protective instincts were incredibly strong, but as the tension continued to rise, the sanctuary was about to face one of the most extraordinary and emotional moments in its history. The atmosphere inside the sanctuary was thick with anticipation. Dr. Emily Johnson stood by the ultrasound machine, her face a mask of concentration as she scanned Gigi's abdomen again. John, the keeper who had been with Gigi since she arrived at Greenfield, paced nervously beside her. His mind was racing. How could this happen? Gigi, always so steady and reliable, was now trapped in a situation no one could understand. The ultrasound revealed something no one expected. The baby was still. Gigi had been pregnant for months, but now, it seemed that her baby was in danger. She refused to give birth, and no one knew why. "We need to act fast," Dr. Johnson said, her voice firm but tinged with concern. She glanced at John, who was watching her every move with anxious eyes. I know, John replied, his voice barely above a whisper. His bond with Gigi ran deep, and seeing her in such distress was almost too much to bear. She's been through so much. She can't go through this alone. As Dr. Johnson prepared the medical equipment for the emergency procedure, she kept her eyes on Gigi. The gorilla was pacing, clearly agitated. Her protective instincts were in full force, but she was also deeply frightened. Dr. Johnson knew that the situation was delicate. It wasn't just about saving the baby anymore. It was about saving both of them. Gigi's refusal to give birth was her way of protecting the baby, but there was something wrong, something neither Dr. Johnson nor John could fully grasp yet. The moment of truth was rapidly approaching. As the medical team moved into position, John stepped closer to Gigi, his voice soft and soothing. It's going to be okay, girl, he said gently, reaching out to her. Gigi turned to him, her eyes filled with trust, but also with fear. She had always relied on John for comfort, and now he was the one who was going to help her through the most difficult moment of her life. With a deep breath, Dr. Johnson began the procedure. The sanctuary's team moved in sync, working efficiently but with the utmost care. Gigi was calm for a moment, allowing them to do what they needed to do. As they checked the baby's condition once more, the results were heartbreaking. The baby was in distress. Its heart rate was dangerously low. It was clear now that if they didn't intervene, the baby would not survive. Dr. Johnson made the decision. We're going to need to move quickly, she said. Prepare for a full delivery. John nodded, trying to keep his emotions in check. He had watched Gigi grow from a young gorilla into the magnificent animal she was today. He couldn't bear to think of losing her or her baby. Do whatever it takes, he said, his voice thick with emotion. The next few moments felt like a blur of medical terms, quick movements, and mounting tension. The team worked with precision, carefully delivering Gigi's baby in the safest way possible. John stood by, holding his breath. He could see the strain in Gigi's eyes, the exhaustion from her prolonged labor. But through it all, she remained calm, trusting her team and her keeper. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, there was a small cry. The baby gorilla had been born. It was weak but alive. Dr. Johnson quickly took the baby into her arms, checking its vitals and breathing a sigh of relief as it slowly began to regain strength. The team gathered around, watching with bated breath. Gigi looked at her baby, her expression softening. She reached out with one large hand, gently touching the newborn. For the first time in days, there was a sense of peace in the enclosure. Gigi's protective instincts had kept her baby safe. And now, thanks to the quick action of the sanctuary's team, both mother and child were safe. John stepped forward, a tear slipping down his cheek as he watched the tender moment between Gigi and her baby. He had never seen anything so powerful, so raw. The bond between mother and child was undeniable. And though the past few days had been filled with fear and uncertainty, the love between them was stronger than ever. The days following the delivery were filled with a sense of quiet relief, but there was still much to be done. Gigi and her baby remained under constant observation as the sanctuary team ensured their well-being. Dr. Emily Johnson made frequent visits, monitoring both mother and child closely. John, who had been by Gigi's side throughout the entire ordeal, found himself still in awe of the bond between the two. The baby gorilla, though weak, was slowly gaining strength, and Gigi's protective instincts had never wavered. She watched over her newborn with an intensity that spoke volumes about the depth of a mother's love. Gigi had always been an extraordinary animal, but the way she had handled this situation, her refusal to give birth until she felt her baby was ready, had left everyone in awe. As the days went by, the baby gorilla began to show signs of improvement. It was a slow process, but with each passing day, the baby grew stronger. Gigi's nurturing presence provided the comfort and stability her baby needed. John continued to spend time with them, offering quiet encouragement. One afternoon, as he sat near the enclosure, he noticed something different. Gigi was lying beside her baby, and the little one had started to move around more, reaching out with tiny hands to explore its surroundings. A smile crossed John's face as he watched the pair. There was no mistaking the relief that filled his heart. Gigi's baby was going to make it, but the story was far from over. While Gigi's protective instincts had ensured the baby's survival, the road ahead would be filled with challenges. Dr. Johnson, still monitoring the pair, began to think ahead. "We need to make sure the baby gets the proper nutrition," she explained to John. "It's going to need more care, more support. We can't take any chances." The sanctuary staff worked diligently, offering both Gigi and her baby a specially designed diet to ensure the baby gorilla would grow strong and healthy. They also introduced a series of exercises to help the baby develop the strength and coordination it would need to thrive in the coming months. Gigi, ever the devoted mother, was always close by, watching as the caregivers interacted with her baby. It was clear that she trusted the staff, but remained very protective. It was both heartwarming and humbling to witness the bond between mother and child. Gigi's love for her baby was palpable, and her dedication to its well-being was unwavering. Over the next few weeks, the baby gorilla continued to improve. Gigi remained steadfast in her role as protector and nurturer, and John spent countless hours with them, watching as the baby began to exhibit more curiosity and energy. The once fragile creature was now exploring its world with a sense of wonder and a growing sense of independence. One afternoon, as John watched the baby climb for the first time, he couldn't help but reflect on how far they had come. The situation had been dire just weeks ago, but now, the future seemed full of promise. Gigi and her baby had overcome what seemed like insurmountable odds. There was still much to be done, but for now, John felt a sense of peace. Gigi had been through so much, and now she was showing the world just how strong she truly was. The baby gorilla's journey was just beginning, but with Gigi by its side, there was no doubt it would grow into a healthy, strong, and extraordinary animal. As weeks passed, the bond between Gigi and her baby grew even stronger. The sanctuary team worked tirelessly to ensure the baby's development, and Gigi, ever the protective mother, remained a steady presence by her baby's side. John, who had been there through every moment of the journey, couldn't help but feel a deep sense of pride. Watching Gigi, he realized how much she had overcome. From the moment of her distress to the miraculous birth, and now, as she cared for her newborn with unwavering devotion, Gigi was proving to be a true symbol of strength. The baby gorilla, though small and fragile, was starting to show signs of becoming more independent. It would often crawl around the enclosure, its tiny hands reaching out for new things to explore. Every movement was a small victory, and John was there, observing with a quiet smile as Gigi looked on with watchful eyes. One day, as the baby clumsily attempted to climb a small structure in its enclosure, John couldn't help but chuckle. The little one was getting more confident, though still wobbly on its feet. Gigi, of course, was never far behind, ready to step in if her baby lost its balance. It was a tender moment, one that reminded John of how resilient these animals were, and how much they could teach him about love and protection. Dr. Emily Johnson, who had been so instrumental in their journey, returned to check on Gigi and her baby. "How are they doing?" she asked, her voice filled with genuine care. John smiled, watching Gigi gently nudge her baby to encourage more movement. "They're doing great," he replied. "The baby's growing stronger every day. Gigi's still a little overprotective, but she's a fantastic mom." Dr. Johnson nodded, her expression thoughtful. "That's good to hear. But we need to keep monitoring the baby's growth. There are still risks at this stage, and we want to make sure both of them remain healthy." John agreed, though he couldn't shake the feeling that they had come so far, and the future was looking bright. For Gigi, it had been a long and challenging road, but now she was thriving, and her baby was, too. The team continued to care for both of them, watching with pride as Gigi's baby began to exhibit more of the behaviors typical of a young gorilla. It was a process of growth, learning, and discovery. One of the most significant milestones came when the baby started to engage with its environment in a new way. It began to mimic some of the behaviors it had observed from Gigi and the other gorillas in the sanctuary. It would reach for branches, pick at the grass, and even try to interact with other animals. Gigi, of course, was always close by, ensuring her baby was safe and learning at its own pace. John watched these interactions with a sense of awe. There was something profoundly moving about witnessing a young animal, once so fragile and dependent, begin to assert its independence. As the months went on, Gigi and her baby began to venture out more, exploring the wider areas of the sanctuary. Gigi remained vigilant, always keeping a watchful eye on her baby, but the little one was growing more confident, starting to climb higher, explore further, and engage with the world around it. For John, it was clear that the baby was on its way to becoming a strong, healthy gorilla. And in that moment, as he watched Gigi and her baby together, he knew that the bond they shared would only grow stronger with time. Gigi had proven herself to be not just a survivor, but a mother whose love and devotion were beyond measure. The journey ahead for Gigi and her baby was far from over, but they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. With Gigi's strength and the support of the sanctuary team, there was no doubt that they would continue to thrive. As the months passed, Gigi and her baby continued to thrive, growing stronger and more confident with each passing day. The once fragile infant was now exploring its environment with growing curiosity. It would often be seen climbing small trees and interacting with the other animals in the sanctuary. Gigi, as always, was close by, her watchful eyes never leaving her baby. John, the keeper who had been with Gigi since her early days at the sanctuary, couldn't help but marvel at how far they had come. He had witnessed the powerful bond between mother and child, a bond that was both unbreakable and heartwarming. But while things were improving for Gigi and her baby, there were still challenges ahead. Dr. Emily Johnson, the sanctuary's veterinarian, had been monitoring their progress closely and knew that the baby's development needed to be carefully watched. "We need to start preparing for the baby's future interactions with the other gorillas," Dr. Johnson said during one of her visits. "Gigi is doing great, but we need to ensure the baby learns the social behaviors it will need as it gets older." John nodded in agreement. He had noticed the baby's growing interest in the other gorillas in the sanctuary. There were moments when it would approach the older gorillas, trying to mimic their movements, reaching out for their attention. Gigi, ever protective, would step in gently, guiding her baby away before any interaction became too intense. "It's still too early for the baby to engage with the others," John explained. "But it's starting to show curiosity. I think it's ready to learn." Dr. Johnson smiled. "It's a good sign. It means the baby is becoming more independent. But we need to monitor how it interacts with the others and ensure that it doesn't get overwhelmed." Over the next few weeks, the baby began to exhibit more behaviors typical of a young gorilla. It would try to climb higher, test its strength by pulling on branches, and even imitate the vocalizations of the adult gorillas. Gigi, as always, was there to offer guidance, nudging her baby gently when it tried something new. But there were also moments of concern. The baby gorilla still needed constant supervision to ensure it didn't push itself too hard. It was still learning its limits and how to navigate its environment. One day, as John was observing the pair, he noticed a shift. The baby was starting to venture farther away from Gigi, exploring new areas of the enclosure with less hesitation. John could see the pride in Gigi's eyes as she watched her baby take these new steps. But there was also a flicker of concern. Gigi's protective nature hadn't waned. She still watched every move her baby made, and John could see the motherly instinct in her eyes, urging her to keep her baby close. As the baby continued to grow stronger, the relationship between mother and child evolved. Gigi, once completely devoted to keeping her baby safe, now allowed it more freedom to explore, though she was never far behind. The two of them moved around the sanctuary, with Gigi keeping a careful eye on her baby, ensuring it was safe, but also encouraging it to take its own steps. John couldn't help but feel a deep sense of fulfillment. The journey had been long and filled with uncertainty, but now, as he watched the baby gorilla thrive, he knew that they had succeeded. Gigi and her baby had become a testament to the strength of love and the power of resilience. But even as things seemed to be settling into a new rhythm, there was still the question of the future. Gigi's baby was growing quickly, and soon it would be time for it to begin integrating with the other gorillas. The thought of this transition was both exciting and nerve-wracking. For now, though, John was content to watch the pair, knowing that their journey together was far from over. Gigi had proven herself to be more than just a survivor. She had become a symbol of strength and dedication, a mother whose love was boundless. As the days turned into weeks, the relationship between Gigi and her baby continued to grow and evolve. John, who had been by their side since the very beginning, found himself reflecting on how far they had come. It seemed like just yesterday that they were anxiously waiting for the baby to be born, unsure of what the future would hold. Now, as he watched Gigi's baby interact with its surroundings, it was clear that both mother and child were thriving. The baby had become more active, exploring every corner of the enclosure with a sense of wonder. It was no longer the fragile infant that had needed constant care, but a growing young gorilla, full of energy and curiosity. Gigi, ever the watchful mother, followed her baby closely, her eyes never straying far. She allowed her child the freedom to explore, but always remained nearby, ready to step in if needed. John could see the pride in Gigi's eyes as she observed her baby's development. It was as if she was both proud of how far the baby had come and still protective, wanting to ensure its safety. The sanctuary staff continued to monitor both Gigi and the baby, but there was a growing sense of confidence. Gigi was doing her job as a mother, and the baby was flourishing. Dr. Emily Johnson, the veterinarian who had been so crucial in the early stages of the baby's life, was also impressed with their progress. "They're doing great," she said during a recent checkup. "The baby is strong, and Gigi is the perfect mother. She's done an amazing job." John smiled at the praise, but he knew that Gigi's strength came from a place of love and instinct. "She's always been protective," John said, watching as Gigi gently nudged her baby to encourage it to climb a small tree. "She's come a long way from the anxious, distressed gorilla she was when we first got here." As the weeks continued, Gigi's baby began to engage more with the other gorillas. The baby would watch the older animals interact and try to imitate their movements. Gigi, though still protective, allowed her baby more freedom to socialize with the others. It was a slow process, but every day, the baby grew more confident. One afternoon, as John watched the baby play with some of the younger gorillas, he noticed a shift. The baby was no longer just mimicking the older gorillas, but was beginning to assert its own identity. It was a small step, but it was a significant one. Gigi was always close by, but there was a sense of independence beginning to form in her baby. John couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions. It was bittersweet to watch the baby grow more independent, but he knew it was a natural part of the process. Gigi's role as a mother would eventually shift, and the baby would need to learn how to navigate the world on its own. It was both exciting and a little sad to see the baby take these first steps toward independence, but it was clear that Gigi had done everything she could to prepare her child for the challenges ahead. The next few months brought even more changes. The baby began to venture farther from Gigi, exploring new parts of the sanctuary. While Gigi still kept a watchful eye, she allowed her baby the space to learn and grow. The once timid and fragile infant was now a confident, curious young gorilla. It was a testament to Gigi's unwavering dedication and strength as a mother. John felt a deep sense of fulfillment as he watched the pair. The journey had been long, filled with uncertainty and challenges, but seeing Gigi and her baby now, thriving and growing, filled him with pride. Gigi had not only survived, but had flourished as a mother, and her baby, though still young, was on its way to becoming a strong and independent gorilla, ready to face the world with the same strength and love that Gigi had shown throughout their journey. Months passed, and Gigi and her baby continued to grow stronger and more confident. The baby gorilla, once fragile and uncertain, was now moving around with more energy, exploring its world with increasing curiosity. It would climb small trees, interact with objects in the enclosure, and even mimic the older gorillas that lived in the sanctuary. Gigi remained by her baby's side, always watchful and protective, but she also allowed more space for the baby to learn and explore. John, who had watched this incredible journey from the very beginning, could see the immense change in both of them. Gigi had transformed from a distressed mother who had struggled with the birth to a loving and strong protector, while her baby was becoming more independent and confident every day. One afternoon, as John observed Gigi and her baby, he saw a new development. The baby was climbing a tree with more ease and confidence than ever before. Gigi was nearby, of course, but she allowed her baby the freedom to climb higher, watching intently to ensure it stayed safe. "She's really letting go," John muttered to himself, a feeling of bittersweet pride welling up inside him. He had seen how protective Gigi was at first, never straying far from her baby's side. But now, She was allowing it to venture farther and farther, trusting that it was ready. The transition from full protection to more independence was natural, but it was still emotional for John to witness. Gigi's instincts as a mother had never faltered, and she had raised her baby with such care and dedication. But now, her baby was ready to take on the world, and Gigi had to trust that it was time. Dr. Emily Johnson, who had been keeping an eye on their progress, visited the sanctuary once again to check on the pair. She smiled as she watched the baby interact with its surroundings. "They're doing wonderfully," Dr. Johnson remarked, noting the baby's growing strength and confidence. "It's almost hard to believe how far they've come." John nodded in agreement. "It feels like just yesterday we were worrying about whether the baby would survive. Now look at them." Dr. Johnson glanced at Gigi, who was still keeping a watchful eye on her baby. "Gigi's done an amazing job. She's an incredible mother, and the baby's going to continue to thrive, thanks to her." As the days went by, Gigi's baby continued to show more signs of growth. It became more independent, testing its strength, climbing higher, and venturing farther from Gigi. There were still moments when Gigi would step in, gently guiding her baby back to safety, but she seemed more relaxed now, knowing that her child had the ability to explore and learn on its own. The once fearful baby, who had clung to Gigi for security, was now a confident young gorilla, beginning to explore the world with a sense of wonder. John continued to spend time with them, watching with a deep sense of fulfillment. He knew that the next phase of their journey was about to begin. Gigi's baby was no longer the fragile infant that needed constant care. It was becoming a young gorilla, ready to interact with the other animals in the sanctuary. Gigi's role as a protector would always remain, but the time had come for the baby to grow and thrive on its own terms. As John watched them together, he felt immense pride in how far they had come. Gigi had been through so much, and now she was raising a healthy, strong baby. Their bond was unbreakable, and John knew that whatever the future held, Gigi and her baby were ready to face it together. As Gigi's baby continued to grow, it became more evident that the time for the next chapter had arrived. The little gorilla, once so fragile, was now an active, curious young animal. John could hardly believe how much had changed in such a short time. It seemed like just yesterday that the baby had been so weak, barely able to stand on its own. Now, it was climbing trees, exploring the enclosure, and interacting more with the other animals. Gigi, always watchful, continued to follow her baby closely, but there was a sense of pride in her demeanor. She was letting go, slowly but surely, and it was clear that the baby had reached a stage where it could take care of itself, at least in some ways. John watched them from a distance one afternoon, marveling at how much the bond between mother and child had grown. Gigi's eyes were filled with pride as she observed her baby climbing higher on a tree. The little one had already grown stronger, and the playful energy it displayed was a true reflection of how far they had come. It was as if the baby gorilla was ready to take on the world. "She's amazing," John said softly, more to himself than anyone else. He had watched Gigi struggle, watched her fight for her baby's life, and now, seeing them together, he felt a deep sense of fulfillment. But even as Gigi let her baby venture farther from her side, there were still moments when she would step in, guiding her child back to safety when necessary. It was in these small moments that John saw the true depth of Gigi's love and dedication. Even as the baby grew more independent, Gigi's protective nature was unwavering. But Gigi wasn't just a protective mother. She was also teaching her baby vital skills that it would need to survive in the wild. She would show the baby how to use tools, how to forage for food, and even how to communicate with the other gorillas. John had witnessed these small but significant lessons over the past few weeks, and it was clear that Gigi was preparing her baby for the future. One morning, as the sun began to rise over the sanctuary, Gigi and her baby were seen together near the edge of the enclosure. The baby was cautiously exploring the outer reaches of the habitat, stretching its small arms to reach for the branches above. Gigi was watching intently, her gaze never wavering from her child. She allowed the baby to climb higher, but her eyes remained sharp, ready to intervene if needed. It was a moment that captured the essence of their relationship: trust, love, and a readiness for independence. Dr. Emily Johnson visited again that afternoon to check on their progress. She smiled when she saw Gigi and her baby interacting. "They're doing beautifully," Dr. Johnson said, her voice filled with warmth. The baby's becoming more confident by the day, and Gigi is such a great teacher. John nodded in agreement. She's done more than I ever could have imagined. The way she's raised this baby, she's an incredible mother. Dr. Johnson looked at Gigi, then at the baby, and added, it's amazing to see them thriving. We need to keep an eye on them, of course, but I have no doubt they'll continue to do well. As the weeks passed, Gigi and her baby grew more and more comfortable with their surroundings. The baby began to interact with the other gorillas, starting to form relationships with the other young animals in the sanctuary. Gigi, though still protective, was allowing her child to take these important steps. The transition from complete dependence to growing independence was now well underway. John could see that Gigi was proud of her baby's progress, but there was also a hint of sadness in her eyes. It was the sadness that comes with knowing that, as much as she had protected her baby, the time for independence had come. The baby was ready to join the larger gorilla community, and Gigi was ready to let go. Watching them together, John couldn't help but feel a deep sense of gratitude for having witnessed such a beautiful and powerful journey. The transformation from a vulnerable newborn to a strong, confident young gorilla was nothing short of miraculous. Gigi had been the perfect mother, and her baby was on the path to becoming an extraordinary gorilla, just like her. As the days continued to pass, the time had finally come for Gigi and her baby to take the next step in their journey. The baby gorilla, now a strong and curious young animal, was more independent than ever before. It spent its days exploring the sanctuary, interacting with the other young gorillas, and imitating the adult animals. Gigi, though still vigilant, had started to loosen the reins, allowing her baby more space to grow and learn on its own. John watched this transformation with a sense of pride and bittersweet emotion. It was clear that the bond between Gigi and her baby would never break, but the time had come for the baby to begin integrating fully into the larger gorilla community. One afternoon, as Gigi's baby played with the other gorillas, John saw a change in the way the young one interacted. It wasn't just mimicking anymore. The baby was beginning to form its own connections with the other gorillas, playing with them, testing its boundaries, and establishing its own place within the group. Gigi was nearby, of course, keeping a watchful eye, but her baby was no longer just her dependent infant. It was becoming its own gorilla, ready to take its place in the world. Dr. Emily Johnson, who had been observing the progress of both Gigi and her baby, arrived at the sanctuary to check on their development. They're doing incredibly well, she said, watching as the baby climbed a tree alongside some of the older gorillas. The baby's developing its own sense of self, and Gigi has done an amazing job as a mother. John smiled as he watched the baby interact with its peers. It's amazing to see how far they've come. From the moment the baby was born, it's been such a journey. But now, the baby's ready. Dr. Johnson nodded. It's always bittersweet to see them grow up, but this is a sign of a healthy, strong young gorilla. Gigi's done everything she could to prepare her baby for this moment. Gigi remained close, but she was starting to give her baby the space it needed to integrate into the group. John could see the pride in her eyes as she watched her child interact with the other gorillas. She had been the protector, the teacher, and the guide, but now, it was time for her baby to stand on its own. As weeks passed, the baby continued to thrive in the larger gorilla group. Gigi no longer needed to intervene as often, though she was always there if her baby needed reassurance. It was a beautiful thing to witness, the gradual shift from complete dependence to independence. The young gorilla was learning how to navigate the social dynamics of the group, communicating with the others, and establishing relationships that would help it as it grew older.